Hello again, Peter Saturday from Universal Dork. I'm back again today to talk about a movie from the late 80s that I've been a big fan of for a long time that I think deserves a lot more attention. This is a film starring Scott Grimes, who you might know from Critters 1 and 2. He stars in this little film called Nightlife. Yeah. This is a bootleg DVD of this film. This film has basically been legitimately trapped on VHS. Now you can see right here that it's also says on the cover of this bootleg, also released on Laserdisc. So I know Laserdiscs are getting quite a bit more popular as well these days, but good luck finding one of those. I've been kind of hoping for a long time that someone was going to give this thing a very fancy, cleaned up Blu-ray release. I think this film really deserves a much wider cult following, especially if you like stuff like Night of the Creeps, because this is a teen horror movie. In fact, I would say it's kind of like if you took a John Hughes film like Pretty in Pink or Breakfast Club and mixed it with a film like Return of the Living Dead. That's sort of the vibe that you get here. You get some pretty inventive looking zombies here, and you get a lot of great action, gore, and practical effects as well. Also has sort of a little bit of a sweetness to it that a lot of those John Hughes films have, at their core as well. But also this film has a kind of resemblance to movies like 3 O'Clock High, My Bodyguard, even a little bit of like The Karate Kid, because it features that sort of classic 1980s trope of nerd versus bullies. And this one has got some top-notch bullies, male and female bullies in here. There's these douchey jock guys in this film, and also their girlfriends are fully in on the action to fuck up Scott Grimes' character, this kid that he plays in the movie, Archie. So Scott Grimes has kind of been a favorite of mine, of course, because of his appearance in Critters 1 and 2, which are, in my opinion, two of the best creature features of the 1980s. Always been a huge fan of that. So it's just such a delight to see him appear in another incredibly solid horror flick. Scott Grimes, right there, you see him. He's kind of that red-headed kid. He is sort of like, I would say, a B-level version of Michael J. Fox. He has got that same charisma as him. He's kind of a teen, kind of hunky heartthrob in that sort of nerdy way. In fact, he kind of does bear a slight resemblance to Corey Haim in his sort of, moosed up hair days with his red hair and stuff. So I also saw him recently in something I'd never seen before, which is the 1980s Twilight Zone. He's in an episode of that. I think it's one of his first appearances in an acting role. It's an episode called Little Boy Lost from the 80s Twilight Zone. Probably one of my least favorites, but seeing him in the role definitely kept me there for the duration of its running time, and I appreciated that much. He also starred in this sitcom called Nothing is Easy with Ke Huy Quan, Data, Short Round from Indiana Jones and The Goonies. And of course, for all of you mega Scott Grimes fans out there, just kind of like myself, here's a little bit of Grimes trivia for you, is he actually voiced Pinocchio in the film Pinocchio, Emperor of the Night from 1987. That is a pretty unique little dark, demented kids film. So if you like the original Pinocchio and some of the dark themes of that, and you like stuff like Secret of Nim, that one is most definitely worth a whirl. We've also got John Astin, who is the father of Sean Astin from, The Goonies, and Samwise from Lord of the Rings. That guy, I think it's his stepfather or something, but he stars in this, but he also is well known for his role as Gomez Addams in the iconic series, The Addams Family, the original. So he's in this film starring as Scott Grimes' uncle in here who owns a mortuary. They've got an incredibly charming cast, particularly these two. You've got Scott Grimes and then this girl in here who plays Charlie, and she also stars in a movie that I'm a fan of called My Best Friend is a Vampire. And you also have a plot that is very reminiscent, I would say, of a Tales from the Crypt episode. So not that it's copying anything from Tales from the Crypt, but its whole setup, its humor, its comedy, it really all resembles that type of storyline perfectly, especially the setting that this takes place for the majority of the film is a mortuary where Scott Grimes works for his uncle. Another thing that I really enjoy about this as well is this sort of 1980s trope of mortuaries and people working in mortuaries. And in this case, really love this sort of teen mortician type character. He goes there after school and works late nights on the weekdays and the weekends. And it just really captures that weird vibe of the 1980s when kids would really work, teens would work these weird, odd jobs. That was really a thing back then. Now, I'm not really quite sure what the kids do, if they have jobs or have any desire to work. But back in the 80s, it was pretty much expected that you were going to find a job somewhere and you were going to work your ass off after school, and probably on the weekends too. All right. So let me read you the plot right off the back of this sucker. Ready for this? Here we go. When the 4 snobby classmates who have been harassing him are suddenly killed in an auto accident, teenage mortician Archie Melville, Scott Grimes, Critters 1 and 2, gets the gruesome job of preparing their bodies for burial. But an electrical storm reanimates the corpses, creating 4 individual ghouls hungry for food, sex, and revenge. John Aston, Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes, The Addams Family, and Anthony Geary, You Can't Hurry Love, also star as the not-so-innocent victims of these very twisted zombies. Campy and macabre, Nightlife puts a comic spin on a classic horror story. We've got Scott Grimes in the role of Archie here. He lives in this tiny little podunk town in the middle of nowhere. He's very uninspired, doesn't feel that there's any opportunities there. He's basically picked on every day by the kids at school, particularly these 4 bullies. 2 of them are these sort of douchebag jock guys in leather jackets. They're like spoiled rich assholes. And they're 2 asinine, mean girl style girlfriends that also like to partake in the pastime of making fun of and ridiculing Archie and basically trying to make his life a living hell any chance that they get. And we see his character working late one night at the mortuary. He's got a bucket of guts and blood that he's bringing outside to dump in this sort of dumpster. And out back of the mortuary are these 4 asshole characters. They're all hanging out there, partying, being obnoxious. And Archie accidentally, as he's going out to the dumpster, spills a little bit of blood on this guy's fancy-ass sports car. Basically the kind of car that total pricks drove in the 1980s, especially teen pricks. And of course, this really pisses them off, and this altercation sort of brings about this chain of events, really trying to target Archie and make his life a living hell. They follow him all over the place, all around town, in school, after school. At one point, they put him into some pretty dangerous situations as they're chasing him throughout the back roads of the countryside there in their car, and he's on his motorcycle trying to make him crash. Very similar to kind of like the kind of antics that the Cobra Kai kids would do. Only these characters are much more sinister than the Cobra Kai, as we'll find out a little bit later in the film. This is basically the tale of teen isolation and desperation in a small town. Now, luckily for him, he has got this best friend that he goes and sees every day. He comes on his motorcycle and heads over to this filling station where his best buddy, Charlie, works. Now, Charlie is kind of the ultimate crush for a teen boy in the 1980s. She is this beautiful tomboy-style character dressed in coveralls, but she also has the same aspirations as Archie to get out of this town. She's looking for any opportunity to get away from this sort of mundane and boring lifestyle that they're living there. The only problem here, of course, is I can't blame him. Archie is super crushed out on his best friend. That seemed like that happened a lot in the 1980s and a lot in these films of the 1980s. And it's kind of clear that, Charlie kind of sees him as sort of like this little brother type character. Although, she's really only about a year or 2 older than him. I imagine that Scott Grimes in this film is supposed to be probably like 17 years old. And even though she kind of views him as this sort of like little brother best friend, there is just a little bit of a glimmer in her eyes when Archie arrives on the scene, which kind of leads us to believe that maybe she could see something potentially in Archie if the right situation were to arrive. And, you kind of feel bad for this guy because he's also sort of like this latchkey kid. We never really see his parents. He's always home alone by himself. And then, of course, he has to head off over to the mortuary to work until the wee hours of the night on school nights. Now, the setting of the film takes place mainly inside of this creepy, funeral parlor where he's doing all of this work on dead bodies and stuff. So there's tinges of horror, but this one does take a little while to actually get into the horror. I would say for the first half or so, maybe a little bit longer, this film is a pretty pitch perfect teen comedy, kind of like romance film. But there is a point, the last half hour or 35 minutes of this film, where it switches on a dime, a 180 into some pretty thrilling, shocking, gory, suspenseful horror sequences that are well worth the wait. These bullies decide to take things to the next level, concoct a plan to get him fired from his mortuary job. one of the sort of sexy mean girls that Archie has got a little bit of a thing for as well. She decides one day that she's going to kind of seduce Archie in the mortuary. She kind of hooks up with him, gets a ride over to the mortuary. They go upstairs into this like bedroom there, and they sort of start getting it on. Archie's probably got a boner. He's not thinking straight. These bullies that meanwhile, while he's sort of messing around, they have found the body of this woman who has just recently passed away. And meanwhile, downstairs, John Aston, his uncle, is negotiating with a relative of this person for the funeral. Now, in the midst of all of this stuff where they're getting hot and heavy, these guys, they push this body down the steps, and Archie is blamed for it, creating this incredibly uncomfortable situation for his uncle and, of course, Archie himself. His uncle wastes no time and fires Archie on the spot. He just got completely punked by these bullies. He thought he was going to get laid. Didn't happen. Has no job anymore. To make matters worse, he goes over to the filling station to visit his best friend, Charlie, and lo and behold, she has got this brand new douchey-ass boyfriend, this kind of older guy that is guaranteeing her a way to get out of this little podunk town. So he's given her kind of a big break. So she's ready to leave. Archie heads home. He's pissed off. He's hurt. Now, this is where things get very interesting because Archie receives this phone call from his uncle, and his uncle is willing to give him his job back. The only thing is that he's got to head out to this terrible car wreck that happened. His uncle calls him out there and says, hey, I need you to take these bodies back to the mortuary, but come to find out that the 4 bodies that he's bringing back to the mortuary are indeed the 4 bullies who have been tormenting him the entire first half of the film. This is a really great plot twist. I love it. Now, these bullies do turn into zombies, which is pretty rad, and they're the intelligent kind. So not only are they wanting to feast on the flesh of Archie and Charlie, but they also want to exact revenge upon them as well. I'd say that the weakest portion of this movie is the reason why these guys change into zombies in the first place. Now, there's no voodoo or black magic or virus going around. Their corpses are reanimated because of one strike of lightning. Yes, that is it. It's a pretty flimsy little, plot device to sort of get the horror going. But, I mean, the movie's so much fun, I'm going to let that go. Because this finale, let me tell you, as far as 80s horror movies go, this is one of the best. They pull no punches here. The kids that come back as the sort of intelligent zombies, that's a great twist as well. They're not these sort of moronic, type of zombie creatures walking around in the Romero films. These ones have all of this previous intelligence that they had before and the memories. They look great. The makeup effects on them are really well done. The practical effects are really solid here. And also there's a bunch of really great action sequences that occur here that really kind of caught me off guard the first time I watched it. Apparently Scott Grimes did all of his own stunts in here, so kudos to that. Good job, Scott. Another reason why I like you. And like I said, it's kind of like one long chase sequence where they're trying to escape these bullies that start off in the mortuary. I mean, there's a really great scene when he's first kind of trying to repair their injuries and putting, the staples on their faces. And he's got the girl on there that was, trying to put the moves on him. He's in the middle of that, and all of a sudden we kind of see her eyes blink open very quickly. There's some pretty well done kind of like jump scare scenes in here as well. You're probably not going to believe me here. This director is most well known for directing the Star Wars Holiday Special. Can't believe he helmed something like this. Now, there's also a bunch of really great gore sequences that happen as well. Inventive kills. There's a wood chipper that appears early on in the movie. And of course, if you're a horror fan, you better be making that thing return at some point, and they do in this in a really great kill sequence as well. A wonderful supernatural showdown with nerd versus bullies in a way that you don't normally see it. And it really captures some of the best tropes of the 1980s teen films and incorporates it perfectly into a pretty sweet horror film with heart, a very unique and original spin on the whole zombie genre. In fact, the cover of this film has a pretty cool quote here from Tony Topone from Fangoria. It says,
"Nightlife is the most original, offbeat, and entertaining zombie film in years. A must-see."
And I've got to agree with him. He was always pretty right on back in the day. This one is pretty much the epitome of what I love about the 1980s. So this movie is also known as Grave Misdemeanors, which I think might have been maybe a better name for this film in hindsight. Maybe I'm just saying that because there is a film also from 1989 that goes by the same name of Nightlife as well. It's sort of this shitty vampire parody spoofy type film. I once had a copy of the other Nightlife on VHS, popped that into the VCR. I made it about 40 minutes through, got real bored, and turned that off. So if you're gonna track down Nightlife, make sure that it is this one with Scott Grimes in the lead role. Let me know what you think about Nightlife if you've seen it before. Let me know if you got any other recommendations. I love doing these videos, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.